Ramona, you're going to start us off today with your story. You served as the chair of the Puyallup tribe, founded the Rainbow Youth and Family Services. You have an MA in education from University of Puget Sound, and you were also awarded an honorary doctorate from UPS in 2000. And in 2003, the Native Action Network gave you an Enduring Spirit Award. But on top of that, you're a mother, a foster mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, and a great-great-grandmother? And you've been written about extensively. For more than 50 years, you've been on the front lines of justice and family rights and Indian concerns, and you're still going hard. You're still fighting. For you, as you're with us today and you're still working at it, what events, what experiences have meaning for you?
Boy, is that a big question. It's all encompassing. Well, I think I'd like to just get started. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to tell this story. A beat suit, are you live streaming someplace? A beat suit, where'd she go? Well, I probably will never get a chance to tell this story again, so I want to make sure it's recorded. I grew up in Seattle mostly, and as a young adult, a friend that I had met at the telephone company, Ma Bell, when I was a phone operator, Jeannie Thomas, had gotten involved with the American Indian Women's Service League and the Seattle Indian Center and the Seattle All-American Indian Dancers. And so Jeannie grabbed me and dragged me in, mostly because she knew my mom went to boarding school, so she knew I could sew. And this was a topic that had never come up, but she knew I could, and I could. And she was making regalia for inner city Indian kids that didn't have their Indian dance clothes. And so that's how she first involved me doing, there's a beat suit. She had gotten involved, and she got me involved, and she had me beating up outfits and sewing outfits. And we used to go to Goodwill and buy wool coats and wool skirts, and we'd make cowls and breeches and dresses. And you know, on a really tight budget, we could make a kid look really good. And so we really got into helping these kids, you know, fit in and belong. And that's important. It's really important for Indian kids. That's back during Crystal Barbies, where everybody wanted to be cute and blonde. And we made our kids look really beautiful and it helped them feel real. And so through that, through the Indian Center, Pearl Warren kind of glommed onto me, and she found out that I could type, and she found out that I could write, and she told me I was going to be doing presentations. And I said, well, I can't talk in front of people. And she said, when you have something to say, you'll be able to talk. And so she had me write letters, which is the early stages of grants. She had me write letters doing requests and then go out and talk to these different committees and boards and congregations to get help for the Indian Center in the the Indian Center was like home base for all of these Indians through relocation programs. There were lots of Indians in Seattle and not many opportunities. And so through that, we started working on getting Fort Lawton. And it was surplus land, and we wanted it for the Duwamish Indians so they would have a land base. And that was 3 invasions that we did, and each one could be a whole book. But we did these invasions. We established a camp. We set up, my house was the headquarters, and it was exciting, and it was during Alcatraz, and so we had back and forth communication with these activists that were home based out of California. Well, one day my mom needed a ride to a tribal meeting, and she just had one best friend, Alice Buber, who was from the Cross family, and she needed a ride, and so I just took the day and I brought her. Now, in my working life, I was a Teamster, and that meant I made better money than most men. And I had a little brick house in northeast Seattle with hardwood floors, and it really did have a white picket fence and a fireplace. And I was driving a new Cougar car, and I drove her to Tacoma, and I was just passively watching all of this. Well, there had been a recall, and they'd kicked the whole consul out. That's how mean my tribe is. They'd kicked the whole consul out. And one of the elders, Hattie Cross, nominated me to be a consul person. And somebody else said, well, she's not even a member. Hattie said, what does she have to do to be a member? Because my mom was there and she was a member. And they said, well, she was born more than 20 miles from the reservation, so she'd have to be adopted. Well, Hattie said, what does she have to do to be adopted? And they said, well, she needs a permanent address on the reservation. And Hattie says, Ramona, where are you going to be buried? And we were in a church basement, which is where all good movements began. Everybody, y'all know that. And I just pointed across the driveway, and I said, right over there. And Hattie says, well, that's the only permanent address any of us ever have. So she made a motion that I be adopted. Her daughter, Tony, did a second. I was voted in. Then Hattie said, I make a motion. I nominate Ramona Bennett for a consul position. Tony did a second on that. And I was on the ballot. Now, I've been a Puyallup Indian for less than 5 minutes, and now I'm on the ballot. So they had an election, and I was voted in. Now, there goes my Teamster life. There goes my little brick house. There goes my whole world as I had established it. Now, I am a consul person for a tribe. And everything we were fighting for in Seattle, we don't have. We don't got it. With Bernie White Bear, I had written the plan for Fort Lawton. And we had everything. We had a school, we had a clinic, we had a treatment program, we had job training, we had a culture center. We had big plans. And now I'm in Tacoma, and I'm representing a tribe that has no rights that are recognized, no land, no money, no services. Our tribe had zero, absolutely nothing. And except our people had continuously held themselves together. And my fictive auntie, Alice Buber, had maintained minutes continuously through all of these years. Our tribe had 23,000 acres that were federally protected reservation land. In 1912, there was a Cushman Congressional Act that allowed us to sell our land. We did not want to sell our land. My most immediate family was murdered for the titles to the property. This tribe was slaughtered and displaced, and we were literally homeless on our own reservation. And so now here I am. And we've got to get moving. And from Seattle, I knew Urban League because the Seattle Indian Center and Urban League had coalesced, had helped each other out, stepped up, stood together, lobbied together, Vietnam War peace strikes, the Southern Christian Conference. Puyallup even had a delegation at the Poor People's Campaign. And, you know, the tribe was not dormant. We were neglected. We had had the regional hospital, and that was Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. It was a big regional hospital, but it was shut down, and that the title was being conveyed to the state. It was a program called Cascadia, which was terrible. It was an awful program. They were using our Indian hospital for a boogeyman and a torture chamber, and they were storing children. It was a bad thing. The Presbyterians owned our cemetery, and that also was part of the original agency tract. So our cemetery was right next to our hospital, which had been converted into this very bad program. The state Fisheries and Game Department controlled our river, and our fishermen had not had a recognized open opportunity to fish for 90 years. 90 years. I mean, we have a lifespan, a median lifespan of 45 to 47 years. And so that was, nobody could even remember when it was okay to fish without being arrested. And we had always had vigilantes. Our fishermen had continued fishing, but they would be dragged off the river, gassed, clubbed, their nets cut up, if they had a little outboard motor, it would be dropped in the salt water, and then they would be arrested and treated like thieves in front of their children. And so this is what I came into. And to get started, I went to Urban League. And I just went walking through the door, and Tom Dixon is actually the first person I met. He's the first person that talked with me. And I told him, I've been elected to Puyallup Tribal Council, and I'm going to establish our tribe. Not reestablish, because we had never had an office. The Bureau sold off our allotments, folded up their carpetbags, and they left. Indian Health, when they transferred the title over to the state, began transferring the title, they folded up and left. And so we were just there, homeless. And I told him, I'm going to do this, but I don't have a desk, I don't have a typewriter, I don't have a phone, I don't have a copy machine. I have nothing. And he said, well, there's your desk, there's your phone, there's your copy machine, that's your secretary, and I'll get you a typewriter. And so Urban League was my home base, establishing the tribe. And they did. They took our messages, they copied our court papers. I did the press work and the beginning grants for all of the services right there out of the Urban League office. They were nothing but kind and helpful. But you know, I thought they'd been around for 15 years like Seattle. I had no idea. They had just opened their door. And I was the first one to walk through. And I wasn't black. But, you know, up in Seattle, you know, we coalesced. And so just right from the get, I guess our tribe was the first Urban League project. And I mean, it was good. We succeeded. We prevailed. Our armed camp in 1970 did what people had been trying to do for a long, long time. We were able to assert our, I must be out of time. What time is it?
You're doing okay.
Well, no, I'm
You
only.
probably got 5-10 minutes. You're okay.
Are you sure?
I am.
'Cause-
I am.
'cause
That's
I
my
don't
job.
want to run over into these guys' time. I mean, I think that's a very important piece of history for Tacoma, that Urban League really rescued us and gave us a home base. And later on, Joy Hardiman and Maxine Mims came to me And they said, we want to establish a Tacoma campus for the Evergreen State College. And we don't have space. And I had built 2 buildings using CETA funds. I found out later that we were the only ones that nationally through the CETA program that build anything. But I had it in my mind that the building materials could be training supplies and the journeymen could be teachers, and our Indian people who were just chronically unemployed could be the trainees, and we could get job skills and buildings, and we did. And so we had a building that had a courtroom and it had a conference room, and so that was the Tacoma campus of Evergreen's first classrooms. Yay! So we've been working back and forth together. Now we need to keep working back and forth together. Our tribe right now is involved in I-940, which is referred to as de-escalation. But we're involved because TPD murdered one of our girls. And so we're very invested in setting some standards of conduct for the police all over the country. And we're involved in 1631, which is climate change. And I don't know if you're aware of climate change. I'm not going to bother trying to tell you if you don't know yet. You probably need to just stay under your rock. Until you're flooded out. But the Indians have an interest in 1631. Part of the fines and fees will go to tribes, and when we have wildfires in eastern Washington, which we're going to have more and more of, the very last relief comes to the tribes. And here in western Washington, several of the tribes have had to move their housing and their schools and their administrations to higher ground because they're already flooding out. And so those 2 issues, and those of you that know me personally know I want to get rid of 11,000 seals that are tearing up the salmon. And all of our hatcheries have only been raising seal food, no progress forward. And so the seals and sea lions need their populations greatly reduced. And for the animal rights people who are offended by me saying that, in 5 years it'll be 22,000 seals. They're very rapidly, God, I don't even know what to call it. You're going to be walking on seals if we don't get rid of some of them. And I was talking to some Indians about this, and one of the girls said she was fishing, and a seal actually came in her boat and attacked her, wanting to fight her for the few fish that she had caught. So we have a problem with that. And there are a bunch of other issues, but I would say those are probably the main 3. Trump isn't our problem. I mean, he is our problem, but he's not our problem. So that's what we're working on today, and we're going to continue working with coalitions, so yay.
Thank you, Ramona. You can drop the mic on that one. Thank you.